You know how everyone's talking about smart buildings these days? Well, we're diving deep into that today.
That's right.
But get this, we're not just looking at the tech itself, but what makes a building truly smart.
Yeah.
And spoiler alert, it's not just about having a bunch of fancy sensors.
It really isn't. It's more about, like, are we measuring the right things? You know?
Okay, so that's exactly what we're going to unpack today.
Li-
We've got a ton of research on this, and one of the things that kept coming up was this idea of vanity metrics. Have you heard of that term before?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's like in the fitness world, right?
Huh?
Where people brag about their step count, but conveniently forget to mention they've been sitting on the couch all day. Haha.
Exactly. Or like someone who's obsessed with how many followers they have but never actually posts anything.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And in the building world, these vanity metrics can be seriously misleading. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Yeah.
So give us an example. What's a vanity metric we might encounter in a so-called smart building?
Okay, so imagine this. A company, let's just say it's a big insurance firm, still basing their cleaning staff numbers on everyone being in the office 5 days a week.
Oh, like the good old days, pre-pandemic.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Their data shows that on average, only about half of their employees are actually coming in on any given day.
Wow. So they're basically staffing for a ghost town.
Pretty much. It's like assuming everyone still uses fax machines just because you've got one gathering dust in the corner.
It's giving serious Emperor's New Clothes vibes. Everyone's pretending the old way still makes sense.
Right. But, you know, our sources argue, and I totally agree with them, that real-time data totally changes the game.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break that down for us.
It's not just about how many people could be in a building. It's about understanding how they're actually using the space minute by minute, day by day.
Okay, so we're talking about understanding space utilization, right? Like,
Yeah.
are those expensive conference rooms always booked for important meetings?
Exactly. Or are they sitting empty, gathering dust bunnies while everyone's crammed into a tiny break room because it's the only spot with a decent coffee machine?
Ooh, that's painful because it's so relatable. We've all been there.
Right. And I think this is where some of those mind-blowing stats from our research come into play. Like, did you know that some studies show that office buildings are being staffed for way more people than are actually showing up?
Seriously.
Yo.
How much are we talking here?
Well, one study found companies were staffing one person for every 190,000 square feet.
Whoa, that's huge.
Right. Compare that to the old standard of one person per 50,000 square feet. It's a massive difference.
Okay, so obviously that has huge implications for cost savings. But it's got to be about more than just saving money on staffing, right?
Oh, absolutely.
What else are we missing when we're looking at the wrong metrics?
Well, think about it. If we know that rooftop deck is mostly empty, maybe it's time to rethink that space altogether, you know?
I like where you're going with this.
Instead of just letting it sit there, could it become, I don't know, a Zen garden?
Ooh. Or a co-working space?
Yes.
Or even, I saw this at a tech company once, a putting green.
No way. That's awesome.
It's about using the data to figure out not just what's not working, but how we can optimize everything, both for the people who use the space and for the bottom line, of course.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
It's like realizing you've been paying for a gym membership you never use. Time to find something you'll actually enjoy.
Totally. So we're not just talking about catching empty conference rooms or unused rooftop gardens here.
Right.
We're talking about using data to unveil these larger trends about how we really use office spaces now, which might be totally different from how we think we use them or how we used to use them.
100%. And you know, it's fascinating.
Right.
Some of the most popular amenities in these fancy new offices aren't even physical spaces at all. They're digital.
Digital amenity. Okay, now I'm really curious. What are we talking about here?
So think like app-based room booking systems,
Oh, right, yeah.
where you can reserve a desk or a pod or whatever they have. Makes sense.
Or even virtual concierge services, believe it or not.
Whoa. Hold on. Virtual concierge. Like in the building.
Yep. It's like having a digital assistant for your workspace.
Okay, I gotta admit, that's pretty slick.
Yeah.
But doesn't it kind of reinforce that we're all glued to our screens even more?
Yeah, there's definitely a conversation to be had there. But it also speaks to how our expectations are changing, you know? We're so used to being able to manage everything from our phones. Why not our workspaces, too?
That's true. It's all about convenience these days. But you know what else is super important when it comes to workspaces, and it's something we haven't really touched on yet?
What is that?
Sustainability.
Yes. So important.
And I'm not just talking about turning off the lights when you leave the room.
Right. Right.
We're talking about the bigger picture here, like the environmental impact of these buildings.
Totally. And that's something our sources were really hammering on, that we need to go beyond those basic energy-saving measures.
Yeah, like what are some of the less obvious but equally important things we should be thinking about when it comes to sustainable buildings?
Well, one that often gets overlooked is air quality.
Oh, interesting.
Right. You might not think about it as much as, say, energy consumption, but
Yeah.
it's huge, you know?
Explain that. Why is air quality so crucial?
Well, think about it. We spend the majority of our lives indoors, right?
Sadly,
And
yes.
the air we breathe in those spaces can have a major impact on our health, our well-being, our productivity.
Oh, wow. I hadn't even considered the productivity angle.
Yeah, and it's not just about feeling good either.
Okay.
Studies have shown that even slightly elevated CO2 levels, which you often get in poorly ventilated spaces, can actually mess with our brains.
Whoa, seriously?
Yeah, like it can seriously impact our cognitive function, our
Mhm.
ability to focus, to think clearly, to make decisions.
So you're telling me that afternoon slump I get might not just be from that giant burrito I had for lunch?
It might be the air. Isn't that wild? And if you're an employer, think about the implications of that.
Oh, yeah. Suddenly it's not just about being eco-friendly. It's about the bottom line.
Exactly. Because if your employees are constantly struggling to focus because the air quality is terrible, that's going to impact their work, their productivity, everything.
Makes total sense. So how do we actually measure something like air quality in a building? I mean, I know about things like Energy Star ratings, but is there a rating system for air?
Well, there are certifications like A and WELL that take air quality into account.
Right, right. I've heard of those.
And a lot of buildings are starting to install sensors that can monitor things like CO2 levels, volatile organic compounds, particulate matter, all that good stuff.
Okay, so we're getting into the nitty-gritty here, which is great.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that this kind of granular data isn't just useful for like building managers or whatever. It can actually be really empowering for tenants too.
Ooh, tell me more about that.
Well, imagine if you're a business owner looking for a new office space. Wouldn't it be awesome if you could see a report that showed you not just the square footage and the rent, but also the building's track record on things like air quality?
That would be a game changer.
Yeah.
It'd be like having those nutrition labels on food, but for buildings, you know exactly what you're getting into.
Exactly. And I think that's where we're headed, this idea of greater transparency in the built environment, where we can make more informed decisions about the spaces we occupy based on data, not just gut feeling.
Okay, so we've talked about the digital stuff and the sustainability stuff,
Mm.
but I feel like there's one more big piece to this whole smart building puzzle, and it's the human element.
Oh, absolutely. We can't forget about the people.
Because at the end of the day, a building is only as smart as the people designing it, managing it, and of course, using it.
100%. And that's something else our sources highlighted, that there's often a disconnect between all this amazing technology that's available and the people who are actually making decisions about our buildings.
So it's like having all the ingredients for an amazing meal, but no one knows how to cook.
It's like having the world's most advanced smartphone,
Right.
but you only use it to, like, make calls.
Exactly. What a waste of potential.
Right. And that's where, bridging that gap between the tech and the humans is so crucial. It's about getting everyone on the same page, speaking the same language.
Okay, so whose responsibility is it to bridge that gap? Is it the techies who need to learn how to talk to the building managers? Or is it the other way around?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both, to be honest.
Yeah.
You've got the tech folks, they're coming up with all these amazing tools and sensors and algorithms,
Right.
but they might not always understand the day-to-day realities of, like, running a building, the challenges that building managers face.
Totally. And
Yep.
then you've got the building managers who might be like, okay, cool, you're giving me all this data, but what am I supposed to do with it?
Exactly. It can feel overwhelming, right? Like,
Right.
where do you even begin?
It's like that moment when you realize you've accidentally opened way too many tabs on your computer and you just kind of freeze.
Oh, 100%. I've been there. But, the good news is that there are more and more resources out there to help people navigate this new world of smart buildings.
Okay, good. So there's hope for us yet. But it's not just about having the right tools or even the right data, is it?
Yeah.
There's also got to be a shift in mindset, wouldn't you
Oh,
say?
absolutely. 100%. It's about moving away from this kind of like siloed thinking
What do you mean by that?
where, the tech people do their thing, the building managers do their thing, and the tenants are just kind of along for the ride.
Right.
And moving towards a more collaborative, holistic approach.
Just more like a conversation, right?
Exactly. Where everyone is sharing information, working together to create spaces that really work for everyone.
I love that. Because at the end of the day, a building is more than just a physical structure, right?
Totally.
It's a place where people come together to work, to live, to play.
100%. It's about creating spaces that are not just functional and efficient, but also healthy, inspiring, and even joyful?
Yes, like imagine walking into your office and the building just knows what kind of environment you need to do your best work.
Right. Maybe it adjusts the temperature automatically or dims the lights because it knows you're working on something that requires focus.
Or maybe it even cues up your favorite playlist.
Exactly. It's about using technology to create a more personalized, human-centered experience.
I am here for it. This has been such an eye-opening conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today and for breaking down this complex topic in a way that's both informative and inspiring.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thanks for having me. I always love geeking out about smart buildings.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of smart buildings and smart data. Remember, the next time you step into a building, don't just be a passive occupant. Ask questions, share your thoughts, and help shape the future of our built environments. Until next time, keep on learning and stay curious.